Joining me now, former Congressman and current Dean of Business at Liberty University, Dave Brat. Congressman, jobless claims. We hear this all the time. Jobless claims up, jobless claims down. People can't make any sense of what we're looking at or what we're seeing or why we're seeing it. All right, how's the economy? What's up with the jobless claims?
Yeah, well, they can't understand that because I think there's been an intentional move not to have a financially literate society. Ask your kids what they're learning in K to 12 about economics or finance or running a business, and the answer is about zero. And then in higher ed, they're learning something about business. They're learning that business is morally bad. Thesis statement from Karl Marx. And so jobless claims, yeah, it is complex, and the unemployment rate is more complex than you would think. There's several definitions of it, and you got to be a student of it, and you got to learn how it all fits in the overall macroeconomic narrative. And that narrative only makes sense if you have working markets, which we do not. And so now, as we make the move towards statist capitalism, with a surveillance state added, and maybe cryptocurrencies coming in our future, it becomes even harder to interpret these numbers and then add on checks that, $10 trillion worth of fiscal stimulus sent out by the federal government that have to do with jobless claims and are in some way trying to capture human welfare, which we all care about. And so you're right. It's a staggering, it seems like a simple question. Hey, jobless claims are up or down. It's simple. It's no longer simple because the state is messing around with this economy big time.
You said we used to have open markets, indicating we don't now. What does that mean? What are you talking about?
Well, just the size and the scale of government, right? And it's not only that, right? Our budget is $4 trillion, right? The federal budget's $4 trillion a year. But when I was teaching economics for 20 years, I'd ask my students, here's a better measure of the role of the federal government and state government and local government in your life. Can you tell me one part of your house, right? And first, how many parts and pieces are there in your house? 10,000? I don't know. Whatever. Can you tell me one part or piece of your house that's not regulated by the government? Water heater, regulated. Pitch of your roof, regulated. How many outlets per room? Regulated. Carpet fiber, regulated. Square footage, regulated. Cement flooring, regulated. Garage, regulated. I get that, right? So when you can't name one part of a home, and I could do any other product, right, automobile or whatever, that's not regulated, that's what you call federal intervention. And every one of those interventions is put there most likely by a lobbyist who gets something out of adding that one line. Hey, you got to have our type of carpet, which doesn't cause cancer if you lick it for 24 hours in a row. Right? I mean, some of it's just absurd on its face. And that was a joke, by the way. But they get that, you got to add this type of carpet because it doesn't cause cancer. And they get that into code, and you got guaranteed profits locked in because you got a friend in Congress for eternity.
Why do you think it's intentional? You mentioned in the very beginning that we have intentionally made people financially stupid. Who did it and why?
Yeah, well, I'll go way back on you on this just because I like throwing it in there. But
Please do.
The world has been carved up into two pieces by two moral philosophers. And that is their significance. And then the two moral philosophers also happen to be economists. One was a Judeo-Christian quasi-Protestant named Adam Smith, who set up the laissez-faire free market economy that made everybody rich. And he's responsible for over half the world and the economies, although they're fading fast. And then the other is, of course, Karl Marx, 1840, Communist Manifesto, father of socialism, scientific socialism, which is an oxymoron. And he's responsible for the totalitarian state and the surveillance state. He didn't believe in any values or virtues. He said they're superstructure. They don't exist. He didn't believe in human rights. And that system right now is winning. And so why is it? The question was, why don't we teach financial literacy or economics or finance in high school? Because the Marxists have lost every economic argument they've entered. There's no proof. There's no in science and economics. You use data to support or reject a hypothesis. Every one of Karl Marx's economic hypotheses have been dismantled for hundreds of years. But that's not what matters. What matters is his moral argument, right? So we don't want to teach economics because that would disprove Marxian economics right now and the socialist systems that hurt people instead of help people. The free market system has produced human rights, women's rights, civil rights, all the rights we know of, higher living standards, welfare, higher caloric intake, higher life expectancy, everything you want in the world has come to you from free market economics. They don't want you to learn that lesson. They want you to learn the one moral lesson from Karl Marx, and that there is an oppressed and an oppressor. And they will tell you who that is depending on what day it is. And so that's why we don't teach economic education.
Yeah, but why are they winning? I've never been able to wrap my mind around this. There has to be a reason. It blows me away. Like you said, the historical record, the data doesn't lie.
Yep.
I mean, even if you don't like capitalism, fine, set that aside. You can't look at the history of communism and think anything other than that is horrible, yet they are winning. Why?
Yeah. Well, put shortly, in addition to an abundance of academic and intellectual errors, they're also mean and they don't fight fair. So if you look at the Fortune 500 firms right now falling prey to ESG, I won't go into all that, but folks need to go learn what that is, ESG investing. If you don't go along with the dictates of the Marxian moral philosophy, they will annihilate you. They will ruin your reputation, your education. They'll ruin your consumer if you're in business. They'll ruin your reputation. And our side doesn't do that because we're taught to like love our neighbor and all these kind of nice things, right? And I hate to be sarcastic, but it is a deficit, right? When you're in a tradition that takes seriously the love command, really.